Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today is a very special episode. We're welcoming back to the show Diana Stevens, who's the founder and CEO of Mindful Job Alignment, and I'm proud to say and announce a new author in our best-selling Business Leaders book series. So first off, hey, Diana, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to be back.
Oh my gosh. So we've been working on this book project for quite some time now, and
Yes.
it's so much fun to finally have the book out, to be
Mhm.
promoting, to obviously bring you back on the show. And I guess just to start this off, we got a lot to unpack and a lot to uncover today, but we'll start this episode the way that we start them all,
Sure.
with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Diana, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Diana, what mission matters to you?
Well, what really matters to me, Adam, is that people, when they're in a career transition, either making that decision to make a transition from a job they're in or that they find themselves unexpectedly out of work, it's
Hmm.
to really help them and reassure them that that process does not have to devastate them and hurt them, that there is emotional support and help for those transitional periods in their life. And it's really a passion project for me. So I'm very glad to be here.
Oh, it's amazing and great having you back. And I guess just to get this kicked off, I don't want to assume that maybe some of our newer listeners or viewers caught some of the previous work we've done together. So
Sure.
how did this concept of mindful job alignment, how did all that evolve?
Well, it really evolved a lot from my personal story.
Hmm.
I've been in the career workforce for a number of years and had a number of different positions with some Fortune 500 companies in sales, and was in an unfortunate situation that between the years of 2004 and 2014,
Hmm.
I was downsized 5 times,
Wow.
and either through divisions going out of business, companies going out of business, or positions being eliminated. So
Hmm.
through that time, I had outplacement actually 3 times, and I found that very, very helpful for meeting new people and all of the tactical steps of job search, such as resume writing and networking and interviewing and
Yeah.
putting together a job search action plan. But the emotional side was a little bit lacking.
Hmm.
So I moved ahead, and in 2019, as part of I always wanted to get my PhD, and I started my PhD in holistic coaching. And then in 2020, really, the COVID pandemic really kind of spawned this to push ahead to finish my dissertation.
Hmm.
And I completed my dissertation called The Mindful Approach to Job Search, where I broke down the job search into about 8 different areas, mainly that deal with internal emotional subjects and
Hmm.
helping to feel better. And some other activities that would provide solace.
Hmm.
So I received my PhD in 2021, and then have been moving forward with creating content, and was very, very excited when your book opportunity came along, because I thought, let's start at the beginning
Yeah.
with this understanding the grief caused by these transitions and what we can do to overcome that grief and start putting a plan together to move forward, because these really are life transitions, and
Yeah.
sometimes these transitions can occur when other things are happening in one's life. In my particular situation, I had a 16-year ordeal with my mother. She had Alzheimer's. I also had a personal health challenge during that time. And not to mention, what happens during transition is that there's a tremendous financial consequence
Hmm.
that occurs. And especially as people are younger, you need those jobs for medical benefits, and then you want to keep contributing to your retirement plans. So it is a challenging time.
Yeah. And so a lot of different things that you could have written about. And you mentioned you wanted to kind of start at the beginning. So the name of your chapter, or the title, Understanding the Grief Caused by Career Transitions. Can you tell us, just go a little bit further into why this subject was important and why now?
Well, it really is. Job loss does rank up in the top 10 of life
Mm.
stressors, right there with death of a loved one
Mm.
and divorce. And people really need to understand what they're going through, and they need to pause for a moment, understand that this is a life changing event, and
Mhm.
take some time to process that internally. Because by processing that and working through the 5 steps of grief and really taking time to reconcile what went on and what they want to do, and just to take
Mhm.
some time, it's really about slowing down and really being alone, going inward and
Yeah.
taking a look at where am I at, where do I want to go, is very, very helpful. And it's almost a little bit it's healing and it's medicinal actually.
Yeah.
I find that too many people tend to rush back into the job search because of the fact that, of course, they need the money and they panic and they have family situations where they need to have a consistent cash flow.
Mhm.
But there is the aspect that if you don't reconcile what has happened and put it into perspective, that you could potentially be carrying negative thoughts and feelings into the networking, into the job interview, and maybe
Mhm.
even into the next job when you're hired. So there's a piece about completing what has happened, working from a blank slate, and then moving forward positively.
Mm. So, just digging a little bit further into the book. So, just I'll read off a couple of these, and for the viewers and audience, just know, hey, we're gonna tackle a couple of these, but we're not gonna go through it all because hey, pick up a copy of the book if you want it all. Read it in the book;
Right,
it's all
right,
there.
right, exactly.
But let me read off a couple of these though. So, transitions are not one size fits all. Life disruptors versus life quakes. Job loss and transitions, spiritual changes, and awareness. 7 types of loss. So, I want to start with this concept of life disruptors versus life quakes. So, tell us
Sure.
a little bit more about that.
Well, this comes from the work that Bruce Feiler has done in his
Mhm.
book, Life is in the Transitions. And he has a very interesting concept about defining um, events that happen in one's life. Now,
Mm,
a disruptor is something that could be a job loss, it could be, in some cases, a divorce. Where it disrupts, it could even be the birth of a new child,
mm,
where it disrupts the everyday flow of life, but
mhm.
eventually everybody kind of realigns themselves and their lifestyle and they move forward.
Yeah.
A life quake is much, much more of a life jarring, disruptive event, and it
Mm,
changes one's life forever. So, in some cases, a death of a spouse, a divorce, a serious accident, a serious illness diagnosis, something like that, where your
mhm.
life is completely permanently altered and you have to move on. And sometimes these are enforced changes, sometimes these happen over time, but
Mm,
it's a really interesting distinction. And I think that it's applied to the job search because for some people, this could be a life quake, especially if they're
yeah.
a major breadwinner and they need to land quickly, that type of a thing. A
Yeah.
disruptor, you can adjust and keep moving on. So I thought that was a very interesting concept, and I hadn't really seen that before until earlier this year. So I think it's an important concept to think about.
Yeah, no, I think that's and what I feel like is, and one of the big things I like about what you wrote is that as I read these things, it kind of humanizes some of these changes that we go through because as you mentioned in the beginning of this, you said, okay, you in your personal story, in your personal situation, maybe you'd gotten some technical aspects of it. And so it's almost like, okay, the technical side's good, but what about the other side? Like, what about the healing side? What about like the trauma of it? What about, and so by you applying these other things that are accepted in terms of grief to this transition in terms of job searches and things like that, when you're downsized and all these other things, like to me, it lets me know. And I was oh, I could look back at times in my life where I'd be like, oh, like I wasn't the only one at that time. I was like feeling like, oh my gosh, this is the, end of the world. Like, especially when you're young,
Oh,
especially when
yes.
you're really young and you maybe haven't, I shouldn't stereotype, maybe other young people deal with things differently. But when I was young, I was like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. I'm like, will there ever be another, whatever it was. Right.
Hmm.
So it really humanizes this all, right?
Yes. It is a
So,
very human issue. I mean, and it's out there all over the place,
mhm.
and it will consistently happen. The,
Mm,
the days of, I think in our workforce nowadays, the days of
mhm,
working in one career for
mhm.
35 plus years and getting that gold clock or gold watch at your
Yeah.
retirement party, Those days are not around. I read that the average tenure in the job
Mhm.
tenure nowadays is about 3.5 years.
Hmm.
So people have to be mindful on both sides,
Yeah.
companies and employees, and make the most of the time and keep a plan out there.
Mhm.
Keep active in whatever industry people are in.
Yeah.
Publish articles. Be a thought leader. Do whatever you can to learn additional skills to be
Mhm.
enhancing yourself. That all helps keep things stable.
Hmm. You also write about spiritual changes and awareness. So as we talk about like this, what was your goal for the reader in this section?
I think my goal was for people to take a look at the spiritual side of
Mhm.
this, because there when you take a look at different people, okay, you
Yeah.
might know different people in your life, you might even have relatives that have never ever gone through this. Why do some people go through this and multiple times and other
Yeah.
people never go through this? And I do think there is a spiritual aspect to that about
Hmm.
calling and purpose, that
Yeah.
perhaps when we are not in our right livelihood, we are then called, sometimes in a jarring manner,
Hmm.
to make a transition into something new.
Mhm.
And I just read an interesting article on that online earlier this week about that as you start to ignore the signs that come,
Mhm.
the signs that will keep coming will become more and more jarring. And
Mhm.
then eventually a crisis erupts.
Hmm.
So it's about being mindful and being conscious to what's going on. And that's something that takes a little bit of a muscle to develop, because I think in our busy lives nowadays, everyone is so busy
Yeah.
rushing around just doing the basic tasks and whatnot, that the idea of deep introspection and spirituality is not always there. And I'm a big advocate for putting structures in place and
Yeah.
practices that one can relate to in place.
Any tips like when you talk about structures, like any tips or thoughts on like how to do that if somebody's watching this and they're like, "Hey, like, well, I'm not the best at this. Like, how can I get better?"
Well, I have actually an 8-part process, which I won't go into the whole process here because I want people to read more of the book and
Yeah.
check out my website. But I think one of the first thing we've been talking about is processing the transition.
Mhm.
And then the second piece of that is really taking time to create space
Mhm.
in your home, or maybe have a favorite place outside that you can go be alone,
Mhm.
contemplate and meditate, and just
Mhm.
think about what is going on, what do you want. Take maybe a small journal to take
Mhm.
some notes about what you want to do and what you want to do next. That's part of that. I
Mhm.
also recommend gratitude journaling on a daily basis,
Oh
because
yeah.
believe it or not, even when you're middle of a job crisis, you can be very, very thankful for the
Mhm.
roof over your head, the food you're eating, and the clothes on your back.
Hmm.
So, and I hate to break it down all the way to that level,
I
but
break it down to that level. I'll
yeah,
tell you, Diana, I will wake up and that's one of my big practices. I can't claim I have many practices. I fall off the wagon and
right,
start something, stop it. I'm human, but that one, I'm like, I woke up, I'm breathing, my lungs are filling with air or whatever, and
yeah,
I'm in, like, I'm in. I start at the very, very basic and go from there.
right. And it's important, and I think it's important because I've known some people who this has hit very, very hard, and they didn't have
Yeah.
a place to live for a while. So, um, gratitude is very, very important. I think spiritual reading is also very important, whatever that means to someone. I
Mhm.
read a mix of things, I happen to like Eastern philosophies a lot. I think they're very simple, easy
Yeah.
to understand. There's a lot of books out there on self-help and things like that that people can read as well. And there's another piece to this that I think is
Mhm.
is is very important for people, is to think about incremental income. How
Mm.
can you get in some incremental income while you're in transition? Do you
Yeah.
have a hobby you can monetize? Do you have a talent? Anyone who speaks a second language or third language fluently, you have a
Mhm.
built-in one right there with interpreting. And my
Mm.
point on this is, I think if you keep busy, you keep out into the community and you keep going, it tends, number one, it lessens the stress. And
Yeah.
number two, you meet more people and you never know where your next position is going to come from.
Mm. Well said. That's very well said. I want to speaking of that, I want to circle back to mindful job alignment.
Mhm.
So how does your company help job seekers with really the emotional slash kind of like the stress side of the job search? Like, how does your company do that?
Well, what we do is I work with clients one on one. I'm also hoping eventually down the line to be starting some support groups because I know there's a lot of different Zoom calls
Hmm.
online right now that have job search support groups and whatnot.
Yeah.
But what we're going to do is walk through this 8 part process: the processing of the transition, the creating space in the home for reflection,
Hmm.
learning about meditation, journaling, gratitude practices, all of that,
Yeah.
just doing a check-in on their diet and exercise plan, keep making sure that they're keeping that going,
Hmm.
whatever that looks like for them. And then talking about the incremental income, seeing what can be done with that.
Yeah.
And then we take a look at the values, personal values. What are your top 5 or 6 personal values, and how can that be incorporated into the job search plan? And then creating a job action plan from those values.
Hmm.
And then capping it off, you have the job action plan. So it's about visualization, teaching about the law of attraction, and visualization on how to be focusing on
Hmm.
that, not talking about the negative. We do that through affirmations. We do that through vocabulary. We do that through
Hmm.
asking the right questions, things
Hmm.
like that. Keeping that going all the time, and even having a vision board of sorts with your targeted position and whatnot. What does that look like? What does your lifestyle, your desired lifestyle look like? And
Hmm.
having that up and visible in the home so that you can keep bringing that in. So that's the process overall. And then of course we work on the tactical, LinkedIn analysis, resume analysis. I have associates that are resume writers
Hmm.
that I can refer someone to, and then the LinkedIn, and then the networking, and working on articles that they could potentially be putting
Hmm.
on LinkedIn, that type of thing. The tactical to keep them out there.
Yeah. And so as people kind of engage with you and your team and go through this process, I'm just curious about the action plan component of this, because I know you're pretty methodical. Like, when somebody walks away with that action plan, is there is there an opportunity to follow up and continue to work with you, or how does that piece of this all look like?
Oh, certainly.
After they have the job and
Right.
they've completed the goal, what's next for them?
Certainly. Well, the action plan that I used in the job search part of it is really an Excel spreadsheet. Everything's
Mhm.
recorded in Excel because you can
Yeah.
sum it up. But it really has to deal with the administrative piece of it, getting all those things handled, and
Mm.
then the job, contacts, how many
Yep.
contacts you've been making in a week, that kind of a thing, interviews, and then the visioning piece of it. But
Yeah.
what it also includes is: how long did you meditate? What types of
Mm.
gratitude practices did you do? Tracking all of the spiritual pieces on a regular basis, to making
Mm.
sure that the pieces that you want to put in there, that the spiritual piece doesn't fall out because you're so busy focusing on the external.
Mm.
So it
Mm.
tracks a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And that's where I work with people. Yeah. Initially, I think it would be about like a eight part program, but I think then we'll have follow-ups and things like that after.
Yeah.
Custom tailor it to people's schedules.
Oh, for sure. No, I get it. And that, to me, like, one of the best things about having a coach, or in this case, someone helping them through that transition period, is accountability is big. Like,
Mhm.
when you say to somebody else that you're gonna make X amount of contacts, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. Well, I don't know what it is, but it just makes you very much more likely to do it than if you didn't have that accountability piece.
Right. And aside from the people who are working in a career who want to make a change, so their week
Hmm.
is tied up working their full-time job, for
Yeah.
people in a job search, this really is a minimum 40-hour a week endeavor.
Oh, for
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
And there,
Not having a job, I've always said, is having a job to find a job.
exactly, it is. And it's a minimum 40-hour a week endeavor. I've recently been working with a coach on an empowerment and motivational certification. Jay Block
Hmm.
has written the book, 5 Steps to Rapid Employment. I was just talking with him about that, and he said, if you follow those steps and you're out there 50, 60 hours a week, you're going to land pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And that's even in the face of what's going on now with our economy, but
Mm.
and even across all parts of the country. So there
Yeah.
is hope, but you have to put the work in.
Yeah. Well, Diana, I mean, it's been a lot of fun, first off, and I appreciate you being an author in our book, and I'm excited to continue. I mean, this is just beginning, where
Yes.
excited to continue to promote you, your work, your book, like all of the above. It's so much fun. That being said, I mean, if somebody wants to connect with you and they want to work with Mindful Job Alignment, I mean, like, how do they do that?
Well, they can go to my LinkedIn profile, Diana C. Stevens, with a PH, on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Also, the website is mindfuljobalignment.com,
Mhm.
www.mindfuljobalignment.com. And they can take a look at the blogs that I have up there. I've got a number of them on initial job search, top 10 things to do if you're downsized, and some
Mhm.
philosophies that are Zen philosophies around transitions and whatnot. So, best way to reach out to me is that way. Send me an email, message me on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and happy to have a chat.
Awesome. And do you do any type of like initial call or consultation? Like, how does that piece of it work?
Usually, I do a 30-minute discovery call. We just talk
Mm.
about what they're looking for, and I usually try to provide resources. If I can't help them, then I'll provide resources to colleagues who can, based on what they're
Yeah.
looking for.
Fantastic. Well, like I said, amazing having you on the show. We'll put all your information in the show notes. What's next? I mean, what's next for you? What's next for the company?
I'm going to really focus on content and want to expand out on this chapter. I want to expand out and write more
Wow.
chapters, hopefully, and really put content together for blogs and
Mhm.
be very, very much an information resource for the
Yeah.
subject, which is going to take more research and everything.
Yeah.
So,
I love that. That makes me smile from ear to ear,
yeah.
because I know that you are a researcher. I know where your
Mhm.
heart's at. I know your passion for content. And when individuals like yourself put in like hard work and create that content, like, the greater good, I feel benefits from it. So congrats on everything, and I'm
Thank you.
excited to continue to get your message out there. And speaking of the audience, so for everybody that's tuning in or listening to this on our podcast, if you've never been or listened to a Mission Matters episode, we're all about bringing on business owners, entrepreneurs, executives that are mission based. We have them share their message, what they're doing, and then we put that content out for the greater good. So if that's the type of content that sounds interesting or fun or exciting to you, we welcome you. Hit that subscribe button. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. We have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. Diana, thank you so much. Until the next time we get to work together, thanks again.
Thank you very much.